Ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's call this a meeting to order. First up on our agenda is public comment. Is there anyone here from the public that would like to comment? Is there anybody that's online that wanted to comment?
Hands are raised.
Okay. Next up is the approval of the agenda. If there's anything that anybody would like to have added or removed to the agenda or a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye. Any nays? Okay. Next up is approval of the minutes from our December 16th meeting. You guys should have received those by email.
5,000 pages that we had.
Yes. Yeah. And I expect
Every
you to
last
read
word.
every last word. And if there aren't any changes to the minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve them. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. All right, new business. Yes, ma'am. I will acknowledge your new. I just want you to know that this was her fault and not mine.
No, it's totally my fault. I found it December 16th.
My fault, actually. Okay.
I'll
Well,
take the blame.
I'm very excited to welcome one of our county commissioners, Sheila Franklin, to this. We appreciate you being a part of this.
I am excited. I don't know why I'm going to be, but then I'm just gonna be like that.
All right, now we're ready for Mr. Steve Dozier is gonna give us a Hendersonville real estate market update. Yes, please, sir.
Hope everyone is doing well today. Pass. I spoke to John. When was this thing first scheduled, John? That quite a long time ago.
Yeah, actually in December, I think, is probably when we had it originally, somewhere.
So it's been moved a couple of times. And so John had asked me, well, how is the real estate market in Hendersonville? And so I'm able to go into our MLS system and pull exactly what is taxes being paid to the city of Hendersonville. So it should be anything in the city limits. So what I've got here on this side of the page, is everybody's got one of these. From 2015 to last year, December 31st of 24, is how the prices have gone from 195 to 461,000 for a single family home in Hendersonville. Condos have gone from 173 to 401, and condominiums have gone from 119 to 342. What is affordable housing? What is that price point? My job here is done now.
That's a great question
Yeah.
is, because we've gone and we'll hear this from the community input is, what is affordable to one person is not affordable to another person. I think that's part of our debate and dilemma in the community is, what is affordable? And, and if you're looking at average sold,
I think it's probably more a variety of price ranges. It's because everybody's income is different,
Well, if
right?
you look on the back side of this to this, it shows activity over the last 6 months. So just in the single family homes, 50 to 100,000. There was one house that went on the market, got sold. So it's selling 0.17 of a month, is the average time it took to sell that. The least expensive thing right now is 150 to 200, and it's not a very good place to live in. Same thing, if you look at townhomes, you've got to go to 300 plus to get something that's even on the market now, and there's been nothing sell in that price range. So the task that you guys have under hand is a pretty tough task. I know we're building a ton of apartments around town, but that's not everybody's caveat to live in either. But there's new ones coming up all the time. I don't know how many the city has approved in the last few years or so, but it's been a lot.
yeah.
But those rents keep going up too because of the shortage of housing. But now we're running about 100 days of inventory throughout the whole county. I did not look specifically, well, I guess I did not do a total here. But for the whole county, we're running about 105 days of inventory for everything across the board. If I include single family townhomes, manufactured homes, condos, all of that, it's running about 105 days, which is still a seller's market. You can still start driving that price up because of the low level of inventory.
Number of days, what do you feel like what's a balance?
6 months is considered a balanced market. 5 to 7 months is considered balanced, but during COVID, we got down to 17 days of inventory. There was nothing. And, I had a house that I had listed at 650. We had an offer of 75 over and a $50,000 due diligence. You knew they were buying the house because they weren't going to walk away from $50,000. But we had a ton of multiple offers and prices just kept going up. The county went from 2019 to January 23. The average across the county was 48% plus across the board. That's why your tax bill went up quite a bit. Affordable housing is tough. We've been discovered and it's just hard to get past that.
So did we actually experience just like a flat line essentially for 2024?
No, it still went up about 4.5% in 24. This may, again, I'm looking at the whole county for the most part,
This
but
is
in
just
the
the city.
city,
Sorry.
it dropped $3,000. So yeah, that kind of flatlined for that, but condos went up 319 to 342. Townhomes relatively flat, 407 to 401. But as that inventory continues to shrink, the price is going to go back up again.
The interest rate also has a lot to do with things.
Well, we had the election, we had the hurricane, we had a number of things in late 24 that have affected a lot of things, but
Perfect storm.
interest rates hovered around 7%. It slowed a lot of folks down, but back in the day, that was a normal interest rate, 7%. When I sold my first house, it was 18.5%. I held on to it for the next 17 years. But again, 7% is not horrible, but when you compare it to what you had during COVID of 2.5, 2.25, it's horrible.
Mhm.
But we're expecting 2025 to be a great year though. It's already started out that way. We've already closed right at $2 million this year already in January. Last year I sold 335,000 in the whole first quarter. So it's off to a better start.
Yes.
But affordable housing, workforce housing, whatever term you want to use for it, is just tough in this area.
Subdivisions, or do we have particular sections that have been bought up by real estate companies? Because we're seeing that all over.
Doing a great job of buying up,
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that going on where they just buy a big community, 400 or 500 homes, and it's all rental.
I've not seen that though, Sheila. I've not seen where a
In our
developer, I've heard that's what D.R. Horton is looking to build a model on, but they have not done it here from my understanding. There was talk of them developing neighborhoods and they own everything and just rent it back for that long-term investment. But I've not seen it here.
D.R. Horton is primarily looking for places that have city sewer, city.
They need it for the density of the building now.
Yeah, because I was trying to sell them a piece of land and that's exactly what they told me.
And they're building next to major highways and stuff. You take Taproot Dairy, which I was on the planning board for the county then, and we approved it, and they're throwing them up left and right. But again, they're starting in the mid to high 400s as a base price. So it's just tough for guys like at Equimat to find employees that can afford to live here. Well, city workers, the deputies and the nurses, and it's just tough.
Talking about the rental product, Providence Walk, which is on North Main. Developer platted it. Was gonna do it himself, ended up selling it to D.R. Horton. They started advertising it as a rental community. But they switched right after Helene, they switched it back and it's the for sale product. So I think they realized either one, the demand is there for the for sale, or the rental wasn't gonna work. Yeah, so.
Well, you take the Orchards of Flat Rock, that started out as quadplexes, and Bruce Alexander, the guy that developed that, ran into some issues and sold the rest of it to D.R. Horton. And they built single family homes, which drove the price of the quads up. So, you know, it's not a great story, but again, it is what it is here in Hendersonville and Henderson County.
And the homes that you would think are affordable, you know, 150 to 250, they have really poor condition.
Yep.
Now,
I was
unless
just
the
doing an
CD,
inspection on the house that they're buying that plus another lot adjacent to it. It's one of the best houses I've seen in a long time and it's selling for $235. And it needs $150,000 reno to it.
investors are picking
Yep.
up.
They're buying it to put his mother in, but again, it'll be an investment property at some point when she moves on to a better life.
I will say too, compared to other parts of the US, I mean, there's obviously like really, really expensive places, but Hendersonville has, I feel like, has always been expensive. I moved from Ohio where I grew up and then from Iowa when I went to grad school. And you could easily buy like a starter home there for $80,000 to $90,000. And this was in 2003 when I moved here. And so when I moved here, fresh out of grad school, I could not afford a home here because the starting price was like $250,000 at that point. And that was like the most affordable home then and was still unobtainable for me. And so it's obviously increased, but it is still, it's always been expensive to live here. I feel like the expense has increased as like a higher percentage than it used to be, but it's always been expensive.
Well, and I look at market data every week that would send to our broker and charges to Neil Hanks and stuff. And I look at it by county and I could easily go back and look at it by city, but Transylvania County, the average price there is like $755. Henderson County is $523. Welcome County is like $640. So surprisingly, Transylvania County is higher because of Conestee Falls and some of the other developments west of that.
Well, and you have to also wonder too, if like the last 4 or 5 years of like policymaking also has anything to do with that as well. You know, if that county or that community is more prone to helping to approve subdivisions or development, is that increasing the availability? And then also, does that affect the pricing? Like, is there, I don't know what Transylvania's numbers are, but do they have a lower number of availability?
Their number's slightly higher than Henderson County, but not enough to make a big difference though. They run about 120 days of inventory, so 4 months of inventory.
Interesting.
Wish I had some better news for you.
This is about what I expected you to say, so I'm at least glad that it's not worse than that.
Yeah.
Steve, do you ever, have we reset, here's the question that, we've gone through COVID and now the storm and the growth. Have we reset the market to the point that regardless of supply amount, this is your opinion, obviously, regardless of supply, the bar has been set and I guess that, the number may stabilize, but going down is really, see where I'm going? Have we reset it to the point it can't go down?
Almost, yeah. My prediction is we'll see somewhere between a 7% and 9% increase this year in 25 compared to 4.5 in 24. I just don't see it going backwards though. The evidence is there that it's not going to go backwards. You might see little adjustments because of hurricane, the election and interest rates, but I don't think the Fed's going to do anything with interest rates at their next meeting, but but people are still paying a 7% mortgage right now. And there's a lot of pent up buying needs that it put off because the price kept going up thinking it would stop, but
you can't do that.
stop it. If you'd have bought prior to COVID, you could have made a mint.
Do you think there's a market for more condos?
Wish we could have bought our.
Condos.
Necessarily cheaper.
I had somebody look at a condo townhouse in Kenmure this weekend. They've never lived in one. They've had a horse ranch and they've had big houses and smaller houses. they just not sure about a condo because you then have higher fees. You gotta replace a roof, you got HOA fees, you got private roads. So this one that I was looking at, the annual fee is $1,651, which is about $125 a month. HOA fee for that complex is $781 a month. And they're now talking about a special assessment to replace the roofs, because a lot of condos are getting away from repairing roofs because it's the most expensive item they have in repair cost. So I think they're losing a little bit of favor, both that and townhomes.
But that's in Kenmure. I mean, I
That one's
realize
in Kenmure.
that one's in Kenmure, so the
Yeah.
fees are a little higher, but I'm wondering about it as a solution for a young person who wants to own their own space but can't afford a house. It's a more
It's a
affordable
good
option.
starting point.
That's what I'm thinking of. You know, we don't really have a lot of that available for young people
Because when
and
they're building
families.
that number, they're building apartments, so they have that
Exactly.
long-term rent out of it.
That's right.
I think they could do quite well if they built condos to sell. They could do very well.
That's kind of what I think for people starting out who, you know, are young families who want to own their own space kind of thing. We don't really have it, but it's something that as we look at a trust or whatever, you know, might be an option.
more condos, they wouldn't be as expensive.
Well, and most of the people moving into this area are older. I think just about everybody that I'm talking with, they're 50, 60.
Well, we kind of suspected that we would see an influx of people coming out of Buncombe County because we've got our water back in week and a half, 2 weeks. Schools were back in 2 weeks. They were a month and a half in some cases to get their stuff back. But look at California. We're having a ton of people come from California now too.
Mm.
Now they got mudslides they gotta worry about on top of the fires. And lack of insurance. They're canceling insurance left and right in California. And they got no water, although Trump says he can get water to them, but, you know, to be determined. Any other questions? Or- I'm gonna sit in the back and listen to how y'all resolve this, but
I'm gonna start calling you Doomsday Steve.
I don't mean to be. I'm just giving you facts. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Steve. Appreciate it. Okay. Next up is the community input report from Fountain Works.
So just by way of a little bit of introduction for this, as everyone's aware, city council always has council conversations every year where a city council person will go out in different areas of the community and hold an input session. And this year, city council generously agreed to let us devote those to affordable housing. And so each city council person hosted a different listening session to get input, and they were targeted at different segments of the community. And if you attended those, you know that we also contracted with Fountain Works to facilitate those and to track the input and then coalesce all of that into a report. And so that's what we have is the draft report. Emily Wilson has been a driver on that project, which we very much appreciate, and she's here to present what is, it's a just about final, but we're still calling it draft until we take it to city council report. So Emily, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro, Angie. As she said, my name's Emily Wilson. I've been project managing this work for you all and have been just so incredibly amazed by, of course, the City of Hendersonville team as always, but just your residents and your community, the way that everyone's come together around this work and given their voice has been amazing. I'm also joined by my colleague, Drew Finley. He's here online as well. I mean, he attended a lot of, or I think all of those sessions. And so if you all have specific questions about things that happen in those sessions, he might be able to help answer some of those questions as well. I'll cover some more detail as we look at the background of the report. But generally, our purpose, as Angie said, is to review what came out of the community conversations and the survey that we hosted as well, and help you all understand what your community is experiencing, what they're looking forward to in the future, and some of the challenges that might stand in between those two things. I'll start sharing my screen. All right, and as we walk through the presentation, please feel free to ask any big questions as they come up. rather than doing a separate PowerPoint presentation, we're just going to take a look at and talk through the report together. So I definitely encourage you to follow along if you have it printed out in front of you. And then I also have just some highlighted sections on the report as well that we'll be digging into a little bit today. So as we walk through things, I would definitely encourage you to, like I said, ask any big questions from me as we move through, and then also just jot down any notes of questions that you want to discuss with your fellow steering committee members, questions you might have for staff. Just feel free to jot those down and use this as an opportunity to think about what questions you have as well. And we'll jump right in. So first, just a little table of contents, but I do want to pause on this acknowledgements section at the bottom. Like I was saying just a moment ago, the community was a huge part of making these sessions successful. So the residents, all of the different businesses who attended the sessions, offered their spaces, the nonprofit partners, churches who made the Hendersonville space welcoming for these sessions are just so appreciated. And then we'll dig into a little bit of the background. So as you all, of course, know, this isn't the first step in the process that the city has undertaken, but it was a great opportunity for residents to give their input. So this report summarizes the insights gathered from these. And then the idea would be that you all use the input given here as you go about forming that strategic housing plan. So the 5 community sessions were all structured very similarly. So they talked through what is your current experience regarding housing in Hendersonville to get an understanding of where residents are currently standing at. What do you hope Hendersonville looks like, housing in Hendersonville looks like in 5 years? So to start picturing that ideal, that vision of what they want the community to look like around housing. And then what challenges exist between those two? So where I am today and where I want to be, what barriers do I have in the middle? And then the last piece was some community conversations or considerations. These were ideas that we wanted to test with the residents, get a temperature check on to see how they feel about some of these potential initiatives and ideas being brought into the city of Hendersonville. So looking at the executive summary, the current experiences, across all 5 sessions and the survey, residents really coalesced around these ideas. The sense of community that Hendersonville has built and that exists is, a shining star and something that residents really value and hold on to tightly. And as it says here, really just enhances their quality of life. I mean, their lives are better living in Hendersonville. At the same time, there is some insufficient affordable housing options, so that creates barriers for particularly underserved populations. So you'll hear that kind of throughout the report, underserved or vulnerable populations. So really making sure that all of Hendersonville's residents have an opportunity to have safe, affordable housing. And the third thing that residents, across the board really agreed on about their current experience is how optimistic they are about the future. They're encouraged by this group coming together, doing this work, seeking input from the community, and are optimistic about where it will lead to. So you have buy-in, you have passion from the community as you undertake this work. Looking at future housing in Hendersonville, these are the things that folks identified that they would like to see, in the next 5 years. Options that support middle income buyers was really important. So exactly like we were just talking about, law enforcement, teachers, nurses, that folks who have these types of jobs are able to live in Hendersonville where they're working and where they're providing those necessary skills to the community. Increasing rental options and just allowing folks to thrive. This thrive theme comes up a lot too, as you'll see, of really wanting people to have that full experience of life and their housing being a real anchor in that. Folks suggested mixed-use housing, vertical development, infill projects. There's a low housing stock like we just heard. What can we do and where can we think about some smart and intentional development to start bridging some of those gaps and creating that long-term stability. So it's not just having a house for 2 or 3 years, but having a house that you can call your home for a very long time, and that that you're stable there. Folks are looking towards investments in water and sewer systems. Infrastructure was a big piece. Having the infrastructure to support developments around the city is seen as crucial. And then the last thing folks are looking towards is pro-renter legislation, and then the city partnering with developers who are intentional and thoughtful in how they create opportunity for affordable housing. And then let's look at some of the challenges as well. So funding frustrations came up. People aren't able to access grants as easily. Affordable housing projects can sometimes be underfunded or maybe not as prioritized as others. There are infrastructure gaps, particularly in rural areas, that prevent developments from happening where they might otherwise. There are developers who may be chasing profits. So as we also talked about, Hendersonville, I mean, people have the bug, right? It's a great place to live. People want to live there. And so developers who might only be offering opportunities to those who can afford the higher price points for homes. There's some community resistance challenges, so the not in my backyard attitude, where folks may like the idea of having some types of housing developments, but they don't really want it close to their communities. Widespread attitudes around that area can create difficulty when it comes to actually implementing these projects. Folks are concerned about preserving community identity. So as we said at the beginning, people love living in Hendersonville. They want to keep that, and they want to continue to love living in Hendersonville. So thinking about intentional holding on to that community identity. They identified some zoning roadblocks, so restrictive zoning policies that may prevent the right types of developments from going in the right places where the community might need them. There are structural inequities, so generational barriers, property values, rising taxes. I mean, there are just a lot of difficulties when it comes to those like structural things that can sometimes prevent folks from buying homes. And then lastly, of course, the economic pressure cooker, right? Wages are low, cost of living is rising. How can people access the types of homes that they need to meet their family's needs? All right, so that's the executive summary. That's the high level look of what we learned across all sessions. And now we're going to dig into a bit more of that detail. So we're first going to look at the community conversations. So, and then after that, we'll look at the survey. The community conversations total brought 155 participants from across the city, which is amazing, especially considering that we had this horrible event in the middle of these efforts, Hurricane Helene. So, this community input process was initially designed to kind of take place through September and early October, and that of course shifted. And so we wrapped up everything on December 9th when we closed the community survey. All right, so we're going to look first at the first session, which was the business community session. This one did take place in late September. It was held at Trailside. There were 40 participants at this meeting, so it was very well attended. Looking at the current experiences of those who attended the business community session, I'll also note that the idea here, it was marketed towards business leaders in the community, that they would come and represent not only themselves as residents, but also the folks that they're out in the community working with and working around and thinking about what their employees may need. So they were asked to bring that perspective into the room as well. So folks in that session highlighted some great things around their current experiences. They feel that strong sense of community and friendliness around Hendersonville, that quality of life that we were talking about earlier. They feel the city is connected and accessible, that it's has natural beauty and just an overall community feel that's very warm and welcoming. So these are those qualities that we want to be sure to hold on to. In this session, some folks even noted that affordability was a highlight. A caveat here is that it was brought up a few times how generational turnover of property has helped with affordability in the city. So those that stability aspect is really important, thinking about what comes for the future generations. Looking at what folks in this session said were their ideal housing experiences, they were looking towards mixed use development as a solution to support middle income buyers, so an affordable way to provide homes for folks. They were looking towards that infrastructure advancement, that water and sewer additions. They talked about some additional support for aging residents, namely tax exemptions, as a possibility to lower barriers for those who may otherwise have difficulty finding those safe and accessible housing, which is also, something to think about for seniors. The idea around innovative development. So how can we just take a fresh look at what's going on around the city and look for opportunities there to fill in those small gaps that arise? And then lastly, addressing short-term rentals. So they talked about taking a good look at the impact of short-term rental platforms. So acknowledging that Hendersonville does rely a bit on the tourism industry, and the economy has a lot to do around there, but there is also this impact that short-term rentals have on the housing market. So how to examine that. Looking at the challenges, we've already talked about infrastructure. There's that NIMBY mindset as well of, I kind of like the idea of this, but I don't really want it close to me, close to my neighborhood. If folks think that all over the place, it can be difficult to find the right place for those additional developments that really do help propel the community forward. Restrictive zoning policies, again, were mentioned, thinking about density limits. And then the economic gaps that exist. So there's just that limited availability of affordable housing option, that reduced stock that we talked about across the board, hits really hard in the affordable options as well. And then some of the community considerations that they talked about, attracting industries and employers who offer really well-paying jobs. A great way to help people be able to afford the homes that they need. Building systems to support and maintain the existing housing stock. That would allow greater access to that quality, affordable housing that people need. So what can we do to lift that up and be proactive in it? Folks look for collaboration between the city and property owners, and thinking about how developments might impact those in the areas. And then looking at zoning and development, they thought again about those mixed income developments, upzoning as a potential option for increasing the availability of housing. And then thinking about, the different types of housing that the city might think about pursuing for affordable options. They said that all housing types are open to them. Nothing's really off the table if it comes to as it says here, modular homes, duplex, accessory dwelling units, everything's on the table as long as it's a solution. All right. We'll dive into session 2 next. And this is the elderly and veteran community targeted session. This also took place in late September. The current experiences, they highlighted a few positive things about their current experiences. So they noted the responsible use of tax dollars that they feel the city has displayed. They see improvements around the community, which is uplifting to them. And they see that, addressing these housing challenges the right way. So going out into the community and getting input from those who it affects. They did voice some concerns about the current housing issues. So housing availability for workforce particularly. They did mention a particular specific concern around developers' proposal for an extended stay hotel that may be coming, and that raised some flags for folks. And they also just identified the need for more inclusive housing policies all around. What they were looking for in their ideal housing experience was homes that are affordable and sustainable. So places that they know that they can be for a long time, they don't have to worry about moving in a few years. They have a desire for families to thrive as well. So that idea of the middle income earners, folks with kids having all of their housing needs met in the Hendersonville community. They noted the importance to be able to age in place, going back to that stability piece. So homes that are, friendly to folks who may have disabilities or are easily navigable, and have the appropriate, floor plans and things like that. They're concerned about being able to age in place. And they looked for pro-renter legislation that protects tenants. And then lastly, something that they noted was the importance of developing really close relationships with developers who share goals with the city and with the community. And then some of the challenges that they noted, the stagnant wages and rising costs. Short-term rentals, again, identified as something that needs to be looked into and how they contribute to the local economy. What zoning policies are restricting folks from being able to build or renovate or, add on to housing in the way that might be helpful for the community. Difficulty accessing federal grant funds is a barrier for some folks, and they want to see more action in state legislation as well. So common themes discussed in this session: elderly friendly housing, right? Being able to age in place, staying somewhere for a long time, developing and enforcing those pro-renter policies. So how can we make sure that folks who are renting homes are protected and are able to have safe and good environments? And then how to ensure long-term housing stability, make sure people are able to stay where they are. The nonprofit session, this was held in mid-late November. This one highlighted a number of things that we hadn't heard in other sessions. So of course, the nonprofit community was able to bring in their perspective, not only as residents, but in out-serving vulnerable communities, and other groups around Hendersonville, and bring those perspectives into the room as well. So in this session, we learned from their current experiences, nonprofits feel like they're carrying a lot of the burden of the housing crisis that exists. There's a strong desire for collaboration between nonprofits in the city, nonprofits with other nonprofits, whatever kind of collaboration needs to happen for there to be change. But there is frustration at the same time due to the time that it takes and the pace of progress. They feel that housing initiatives are often deprioritized when compared with other initiatives and projects that the city might undertake. And again, looking at that balance of tourism and housing needs, thinking about short-term rentals. They also talked about some of these systemic issues that perpetuate vulnerability. So manufactured and mobile homes being a great example of that. So in session 1, we talked about how there were some participants at that session who had a great benefit in being able to, have a home left from them from a family member or something of that nature. Mobile and manufactured homes, typically, you own the home, the physical, home, but you don't own the land that it sits on. So that perpetuates that vulnerability and might not be seen as a solution necessarily. In their ideal housing experience, they talked about wanting land to be accessible for generations. They also talked about wanting to prioritize affordable units that reflect local values. So thinking a lot about keeping that community feel that makes Hendersonville a special place. Some of the challenges they identified popped up in other sessions as well, like we've already talked about, limited funding, restrictive policies, the community resistance that comes with some of these projects, and then profit, putting profit over community, chasing those luxury developments like we talked about before, that might exclude some lower and middle income earners from having that safe, affordable housing that they need. Looking at the community considerations, they thought about things like the water and sewer infrastructure, again, something folks are really looking forward to thinking towards. They wanted folks to be bold and sustainable, be innovative in how we think about addressing these challenges. This is a persistent issue. This is something that takes a lot of intentionality to solve and a lot of partnership and collaboration. So making sure that that stays through. Looking at community development, they want to be able to build community with other residents and avoid displacing vulnerable communities. And then looking at session 4, so this one focused on the Black community around Hendersonville, also took place mid-late November. This session, folks talked about in their current experiences having a lot of pride in their homes, right? They love their homes, they love their neighborhoods and the communities that they've built. So how to hang on to that. You know, they highlighted a lot of things that we've also seen again before in previous sessions, you know, limited availability of diverse options, zoning regulations being a big challenge, that infrastructure, right? They said here though, the infrastructure being for external interests. So those developers who may not have the communities, the same community vision in mind, providing infrastructure availability for those. They also noted that generational patterns of exclusion continue in places where you might have thought that it wouldn't exist anymore. It does still, and that results in a lot of difficulty for the more vulnerable populations. Looking at their ideal housing experience, folks from this session talked a lot about addressing the systemic and historical inequities that have played through, and opportunities to empower residents and bring them into this work as well. They envision vibrant and connected communities that uplift and encourage each other. And again, looking for those innovative solutions to the housing crisis. The challenges that they identified, preserving those community identities, those longstanding neighborhoods that folks have built. Thinking about pricing out current residents, that's always a concern as you think about moving forward. And then structural inequities, addressing some of those systemic barriers that exist for folks. Looking at the community considerations, these folks talked a lot about the zoning and infrastructure. So thinking about, that's a good one for this to be a draft. That one is more around finances. They talked a lot about finances and funding. So declining manufacturing jobs in the area, having an impact on residents' wages, high taxes, increasing financial strain, just a difficult financial situation for folks in the community. Thinking about structure and policy, they noted some things like redlining and predatory lending still exist, and there's still artifacts and consequences of that existing. They expressed some skepticism about local leaders prioritizing community housing needs, so representing the full voice of the community as they consider projects and things. And then looking at cultural considerations, this group talked a lot about cultural attachments. So again, that keeping that sense of community that's been built even as communities may shift a bit over time. They talked about the stigma that surrounds low-income housing and homelessness. And then they talked about short-term rentals. Again, what are the impacts of those? So common themes discussed in this session: how to maintain neighborhood and community identity, even in the midst of potential changes. And then something interesting that came up in this session was the term low-income housing has poor connotations that could be offensive to some. It doesn't paint a great picture in folks' mind when that might not be a fair assessment. And then lastly, in the sessions, we had the Spanish-speaking community session. This one was held in early December. Thinking about folks who participated in this session, I'll also note before I dive into this one that this session was held fully in Spanish, thanks to our wonderful, wonderful partners at Mountain True and True Ridge's Healthy Communities program. It was a first for Fountain Works also, but it was an amazing, amazing event that we're very proud of. So in folks' current experiences in that session, they identified, having a tranquil and safe environment, right? They feel that the city is a calm and safe place to live, very important, as we'll get into in the survey as well. Folks did identify some barriers to affordable housing that exist currently. So limited access to financing, stringent criteria for renting and purchasing, just navigating the housing process in general. I know a lot of folks in this session mentioned like online applications for rentals being a barrier for them. Thinking about ideal housing experience, folks in this session, again, infrastructure coming up as something folks look forward to. Broadening rental options, having more rental stock that folks are able to look into. Improved financial access, simplifying the path to home ownership, some of those process complexities that they were highlighted in the current experiences. Providing resources to the community around how to navigate, the home buying process, the home renting process would be helpful. And then they also identified access to driver's licenses being a barrier for them. Thinking about the challenges that this group discussed in this session, the first, equitable access. So having access to the systems and processes that allow people to find and move into their homes was a barrier for them. They also see some infrastructure limitations coming up as a potential challenge. And then of course the economic issues like we've talked about, wages being a bit lower and cost of living increasing. And then looking at the community considerations this group highlighted, they see an opportunity for continued public engagement, so keeping the community involved in these efforts and as the city moves forward in its plans. Continuing to focus on affordability as we think about these things and affordability for all. And then guidance and resources, providing those accessible resources for folks. Reducing barriers to financial access when possible, and then making sure that local leadership are held accountable to the plans that they create to support the affordable housing across the city. So common themes in this session: how to make quality, affordable rentals more readily available, so increasing that rental stock, and then access to support and resources. All right, we're going to shift from the community sessions into the survey. The survey had 377 respondents. It asked 18 questions. You can find the full survey information, all the responses, all of those things in the appendix document. I definitely encourage you, as we flipped through here, there were some quotes on some of the pages. There are more towards the end of this report. There's a full, every single one that we collected on the survey is also in the appendix. And some of those are really powerful. So I encourage you to just take a look through those survey results as you're able to. Looking at what we found in that survey, safe, secure housing was identified as the most important for folks as they consider where they want to live. Other things were important as well, long-term stability, financial manageability, but safety was top of the list for respondents. The affordability for both current and future residents was a thought as well. Thinking about how to preserve the community feel that Hendersonville has as it explores its housing options was important to folks as well. Thinking about their preferred housing solutions, the things that they would like to see implemented to help address the housing crisis. Apartments were seen as a great option across the board. Accessory dwelling units also had a lot of popularity among respondents as well. Mobile and manufactured homes, I will note, did receive a bit less support. But generally there was as was also reflected in the sessions, it was seen as any option can be a good option. Let's just think it through. There were mixed opinions on public subsidy. So some folks were okay with using public funds towards some affordable housing solution. Others did not think that is what they would want to see. Some potential options for using those public funds or infrastructure improvements, like we've talked about, a few times throughout the report. Exploring no or low interest loans, and direct subsidies and partnerships, have a bit less popularity among respondents as well. Looking at attitudes that folks have towards affordable housing, across the board, folks did acknowledge that there is an affordable housing crisis, and it is something that the city needs to work to address. As we said at the beginning, a lot of strong community support around that and buy-in from the community that this is important and it is an issue that needs to be addressed. A lot of folks did support subsidized housing as a solution. Fewer agreed that it should be used for building that generational wealth. So passing from generation to generation. Then lastly, the integrated affordable housing development. So there was a kind of middle of the road response of including affordable housing across all developments. But limiting affordable housing to designated areas doesn't have a lot of strong agreement either. Perceived housing challenges and needed solutions. So there's cost and supply barriers, general population growth. You all are a popular place. Folks want to live there, contribute as well. Assistance needs for obtaining housing. A lot of folks don't need that assistance, but a number of the community does. So some of the options included here. A need for more homes available, more rental units, alternative financing options. Folks are looking to explore ways to be able to get into the homes that they need. And then concerns about affordable housing. Most were concerned about its impact concerned about the quality of affordable housing and then its impact on public safety. Because as identified, public safety was that #1 thing that folks were thinking about, where do I want to live? How safe is it going to be for my family and I? All right, so what does it all mean? So there are shared priorities across all sessions in the survey, particularly around workforce housing, mixed-use development, zoning reform, and then bringing equity into housing as much as we're able to. Some divergent themes that we found, so community identity. Folks in the Black community session focused on preserving that cultural identity. The nonprofit community talked about collaboration to address gentrification. Another divergent theme, barriers for undocumented residents. So at the Spanish-speaking session, the community highlighted, legal, language, and resource barriers that weren't really discussed as widely across other sessions. And then funding and policy priorities. The elderly and veteran group talked a lot about federal grants and state legislation, pro-renter policies. At the same time, the business community stressed more of the private sector partnerships, being intentional about partnering with developers and making the community's values and goals known. Some unique considerations. So cultural preservation. The Black community participants were uniquely focused on preserving their community's cultural identity, holding on to that community that they've built, even in the midst of change. The veteran and elderly community session, they focused a lot about aging in place and intergenerational housing emerged as uniquely prominent in this group. And then language accessibility. So Spanish-speaking participants, talked about the value that multilingual support would provide them in being able to access these houses. All right. So yeah, in conclusion, there's definitely work to be done, but your community is on board. They have lots of great ideas and they believe in the path that the city's undertaking as it examines its strategic housing plan.
Thank you, Emily.
Absolutely.
Anyone have any questions for Emily or Drew?
I don't have questions. I have discussion points, but maybe that's not really best for them. I don't know. No, I mean,
They can listen.
They can listen, yeah. But if you want to go ahead and dive into discussion, we can.
so, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
jump in.
So I have a couple questions. When at the beginning of the report is kind of like a focus on some of the underserved communities. That was like a priority, I think I don't know, that was maybe like back at the first couple slides or.
On executive summary?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I guess I'm a little concerned that that was like part of the executive summary because the middle income bracket, like I think like national averages are like 52,000 to like 155,000. And so I kind of feel like those people are very highly impacted by the cost of housing here. Also, and so how do you incorporate that into this entire thing? Like, I mean, I don't want them to be like forgotten and think that their struggle with affording homes for their families are less important than also addressing the underserved. I mean, I think they're equally important, but that middle, you know, a family that's making 52,000 with 4 kids is struggling, I think, almost equally as bad as a family who is 52 or 34.
Yeah.
So that's considered, I think low income was 34,000.
Not for a family of 4.
Okay, so, but if you're looking at that, at those brackets, they're still, are we categorizing them as underserved, or what is considered underserved? Because I feel like that middle bracket is also
I
underserved.
feel like the middle served is the most underserved because they're not, or the middle
Wait.
bracket is the most underserved. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, but what
I
is,
hear you.
what is the definition of underserved in this report? Because I feel like what you said.
Yeah.
They're equally as.
Yeah.
Underserved, but is that the definition of underserved in this report?
Emily, can you answer that? I don't think that's what was meant by underserved. I think, but you raise a good point that I think you could definitely add that about the workforce.
Yeah, because I feel like they're the
Priority.
people that are also supporting.
Yeah.
All the things that we do to make our lives easier and better, and they're really struggling. And I just don't want that group of people to be kind of not talked about.
There's strong labor force that do not qualify by
Yes.
This is the
a
people
few
who,
hundred or a few thousand
Right.
to be considered low income, where they get all of
Yes.
this great help. And they can't afford to buy anything that's considered
Correct.
median.
I think we could add a bullet point to
Well,
that point.
on page 4, just
it's on here too. The middle income is right underneath it.
participants want housing that supports middle income buyers, increases rental options and allows retirees, workforce members and young families to thrive.
I just think that that needs to be also a main focus and part of the executive summary. Because that is the highlighted area of this report, and those people are equally as important.
That's in the executive summary too.
So here. So, but what is this box in the middle?
Those are current experiences that are highlighted and then future housing in Hendersonville. So honestly, I think this underserved population can be defined however we want to define it.
Yeah.
If we want to say that middle income people are a part of that, which I think they are. But they're.
I just don't think
they're
that
also-
was I don't know, maybe they could answer what their intent of was that, like with that wording. I just don't want those people to be forgotten in any type of plan or discussion that we have. And I know they're not being forgotten, but when I see those bullet points and they're saying the underserved, I feel like that middle group is also equally underserved. And so what is your definition of underserved?
We can certainly expand the that, you know, box to say underserved and middle income. This synthesis only looks at people's responses like specifically in that session, like that section of like the current experiences across all 5 sessions. So it might be that as they were having those conversations in the room, the middle income piece was just mostly coming up in that ideal. And there weren't folks talking about, like folks from the middle income area at those sessions talking about their current experiences. That's not to say that they don't have that experience, but it just wasn't data that we collected. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mhm.
I have another question. In any of the sessions, did we get a definition or an idea? Someone was telling us that they wanted affordable housing and they desired that, and they were hearing that these are the sessions that they are at. Did we get any sense of idea of what their definition of affordable housing was?
Not that we called out. Drew, do you recall that at any point?
I don't, but I do think that what I remember is, good evening, everybody. I'm Drew Finley with Fountain Works, and I was at all of these sessions. There were folks at least two that I can remember off the bat that they expressed some frustration that there wasn't a definition that they could work from, because I think that what we heard from these sessions overall, and what can be frustrating when communities are trying to tackle this issue, is exactly what you're saying. Like, what do we actually mean by affordable housing? And it wasn't like, when we conducted these input sessions, we didn't come into the session and say, here's what affordable housing means. We didn't give a definition. So there were folks at different sessions who expressed concern that there wasn't that definition. And there were different, ways that folks talked about what they meant by what does affordable mean. But beyond that, there wasn't anything in particular that we called out. And I don't think, Emily, correct me, but I don't think we have a definition in the report itself either.
We don't. We had at one point discussed having a definitions section added into the report, and then we decided not to touch that quite yet. That is absolutely something we can still add if that's what you all would like to do.
I think that we did, I think people were at different levels of affordability whenever we were in the meeting. 'Cause the two that I did, we did have some conversations about how affordability is subjective, and like what's affordable for me may not be affordable for you, or vice versa. And so we kind of left it open-ended, it felt like to me, on purpose. But either way, it seemed like there were people, at least in the two that I did, across the board, that were all talking
Yeah.
about how it wasn't affordable. And they were at different levels,
Right.
in their life.
And I guess just for like, if folks in the community want to see their elected officials doing things, or this group doing things to improve their situations, like, do we need to have some sort of like measure? So like, if we say, okay, we are creating affordable housing by like the definition, and then we have this whole slew of people who are like, well, you didn't do anything for me, or, you know what I mean? So like, I want to make sure that we are not leaving anybody, you know what I mean? Because there are some people that say 400,000 is affordable to me, and there are some people who are saying 100,000 is
We've heard all
affordable to
of that.
me. And if we're not really sure of what their definition of affordable is, then how do we accomplish what they're asking us for?
So one reason that the plan is being called the strategic housing plan, not the affordable housing plan, is because we're trying to provide affordability at all levels. And so if you want a definition of affordable housing, it is for every person going to be different, but the definition is where they are spending no more than 30% of their income on housing.
Okay.
That's going to be the definition of affordable housing. So that's going to mean different things for people at different price points. So if you're at 80% AMI, what's affordable for you is it's going to be reflected in the chart,
Okay.
right? And so that's how we'll do it.
That's
But
great.
yeah, it's intended to be the entire spectrum, because in some of the sessions, and if you look at the needs assessment that was done by DFI, people at the higher income levels are also having a hard time finding places to live. And so that's why it's called the strategic housing plan, not the affordable.
Thank you. My last question, sorry. I saw a thing about declining manufacturing. And I didn't believe that we were seeing a decline in manufacturing jobs in Henderson County specifically. And so did we provide education as well, that we actually have a rising manufacturing community?
Not yet, because
Okay.
this is what people think and what
Their
people feel,
perception.
their perceptions, and some of their perceptions may not be correct. Okay, and so we'll have to be careful to address that when we input this into the plan, to say the community has this perception. The data doesn't support that perception, so we need to do a better job of educating people about their misperceptions. Okay, so that's a really important, I'm glad you brought that up, because we talked about that this morning, that this is what people think and feel. This is what their beliefs are and what their experiences.
Because there's like over 130 industries here in the county and most all are thriving so well. And got,
what the partnership is doing is bringing in, we've got several folks here that are on the partnership. They're bringing in jobs that are paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000.
That's right.
And they're doing a great job of recruiting those kind of.
Right, right. People just aren't aware of it, and so that's what that tells me is people aren't necessarily aware of all of that. And it's a point in time from a group of people that came to give their input, so.
Jobs when the Coates plant closed, how many people lost their jobs when that closed?
As far as we know, some of them, 20 some, and they all got jobs within days.
Yeah. You drive by, it looks like it doesn't work. I have a question. So, so I also do this with Lotsar up in Asheville. So some of the things that we do is I'm wondering, these people that are looking for affordable housing, do they know what their credit reports are? Are they aware of different options that are available as far as financing? We have a partnership with, what is it called? And I just had it on the top of my tongue a minute ago, On Track.
There you go.
And On Track will, they'll come out, we'll have these different groups and different areas, and On Track will come out and do free credit reports and, and then there's other lenders and other housing options that are at those, fairs, job fairs. So I don't know whether or not these people are even aware what's out there to be considered affordable.
And we had also had that exact discussion maybe 3 years ago at one of our planning retreats or our city council retreats about offering, I don't want to call it credit counseling, but kind of like, hey, this is what all this means. And this is how you can, if your credit score is not great, you can actually improve your credit score. And here's how you qualify for mortgages and like just kind of,
So we were having some of these same conversations. One of the strategies, one thing I learned at the affordable housing conferences that I've been to is we really need a HUD certified housing counselor to be available to everybody to know what all these options are, to know the funding sources. And so it's going to be on the list that we bring to you as a strategy to have somebody like that, to be like a housing navigator kind of thing.
Because I think there really is a lack of knowledge and like
There is.
nobody taught me how to navigate all this stuff.
Oh,
Like, you just fly by the seat of your pants and hope for the
Right.
best.
No, I think the best thing that ever happened to me when I graduated from college was my aunt gave me this book by Susie Orman, and it's like for the young, fabulous, and broke. And which I was all of those things. I really learned a lot, and it was written like perfectly for somebody that was my age and out of college, and but a lot of people don't have somebody in their family giving them that kind of book or the where to actually read it and like implement it. And so I feel like that is such a valuable thing to offer our community, and it's cheap to do that, to just give people these discussions about your finances and, because I don't know that they teach that in school. They have financing, no, maybe
we do.
Henderson County does.
Yeah, I know Apple Valley.
I was gonna say, I think
Yeah.
somebody did tell me that they.
Is it a class that goes into everything? That's great news, because we never,
I didn't have that class.
Do a Dave Ramsey whole blowout thing.
oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
So there's many of the middle schools incorporate that. And I think that they just made it,
High school as well.
yes,
That's awesome to hear.
That is awesome.
That's very good.
it's a lot of fun to watch the students like going to shop.
It's something else that also, if that's integrated into the community land trust model too. It's home preparedness, getting people ready to buy a home. And so also tons of opportunity there.
Thank you.
And I'll just add from the insights from what we heard at a lot of the sessions that folks want those resources and support for navigating different things, whether it's, with their credit report or with, how to advice on how do I get to where I can own my own home. Where we heard that most prominently was at the Spanish speaking population session. There were a lot of folks who said that they really appreciated having the session because it gave them that opportunity to share that, and that they would love to see more of it when it comes to, they feel like the process of, housing in particular, and specifically with how do I get to a point where I own my own home and what are the steps that I need to do? That was most prominently featured in the Spanish speaking population session. So I just wanted to note that on the theme of resources to support the community.
Can you speak on how the participation went? Was it strictly city people or was it county-wide?
It was targeted towards city residents because this is the strategic plan for the city. But I won't say that there weren't county people there too. I would expect
Yeah, I would say we got a wide swath that
Yeah.
attended in person, and I will say notably in the Spanish-speaking community,
Yeah.
just based on, we offered a grocery card raffle thing at some of the meetings, and so there were no barriers to participate in the meeting, but based on a lot of the addresses that would come in to receive that gift card raffle, there were a lot of folks outside the city as well.
yeah, in the survey, respondents, 43% of the respondents live in the city of Hendersonville.
Okay, so half.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and it's nice to see that even though the city was kind of hosting them, that we are reaching out to people in the county, and that county people are just as concerned about these issues as the city. And
Great. Okay. Any other questions or discussion about the community input report? All right. Next up is our state, our home grant.
So I'm gonna stand up here so I can be close to the board and read from my eyesight. Okay, so, very exciting news. We got approved, we got selected to participate in the Our State, Our Homes grant. And so I wanted to give you a little quick update about that, and what that is gonna mean for us. So this grant was supported, it's a part of Carolina Across 100, where they're trying to support some sort of housing initiative in all 100 counties. The Carolina Engagement Council, you can see over here, these are all the professional schools at the School of Government. They make up this engagement council, and so it's guided through them, through the all the professional schools of the university. And then the NC Impact. This is the commercial for the people that are sponsoring the grant. And DFI that you're familiar with, that we're working with also. But so I got a call last fall from somebody at DFI saying, why don't you all apply for this grant? It'd be perfect for you all. And so the grant is an 18-month program to help communities develop capacity, analyze challenges, and implement strategies to address affordable housing and related issues in North Carolina. So what do you get? You get access. This is the biggest thing you get. It's a $17,000 grant, but you would get access to these experts who will help you implement a strategy, implement a project. It was Frank Naraka from DFI that called, and he was like, this would be perfect for your land trust, because we can help you all navigate through the formation of your land trust. And so if you'll remember, back in August, you all took a field trip and toured and met with the Community Home Trust of Chapel Hill. And then when you came back, you actually made a motion and voted to recommend a community land trust to City Council. So it felt like this was okay. This was furthering what you all had already voted on to go ahead and apply for this grant. Now, it got interrupted by Helene, and so this all had to happen pretty quickly and last minute, and we still have to bring it to City Council for formal acceptance. But so this, I have a copy of the application that I was going to give everybody that we submitted. so you can know basically what we said, but the project is the organization and formation of a community land trust for the city of Hendersonville. And the goals are to establish a legally and financially sound structure and engage the community in the planning process. And we want to have a community-based engagement so that the trust that gets formed is gonna meet the needs of the community, not what we think that they need, but what after we engage the community, we hear is gonna be workable. And so we had to come up with a team of 5 that's gonna be the core team of the project. And so we came up with myself and the city manager, somebody from the partnership, somebody from WNC Source, and a community-based lender. And so we submitted this is gonna be our core team. And then we had to have key partners and stakeholders as an advisory committee. And so I think I mentioned when we were doing the calendar that we had submitted for this grant, and if we got it, that this committee would serve as a great cross-sector community advisory committee for the establishment of the trust. And so that's what we submitted in the grant application. And then if you look at the bottom, though, we would need to augment this committee with some individuals who would be clients or need affordable housing to serve on the committee so that their perspective could be represented as well. And I'm going pretty quickly, so stop me if you have questions. So we got notified December 17th that we had been selected. So I was really excited about that. These are the other teams. So what they're doing is they're bringing these teams together in Chapel Hill 5 times over the course of 18 months. And they're going to tailor the training to the different projects that people are doing. And they're going to teach us how to put together the project and make their experts available to give us technical assistance. And to me, that's the value of the grant, is to have access to all the experts at the School of Government, their law school, their business school, to help inform and put this project together. And we're number 3, as you can see, we're the little dot. Everybody else, are counties, but we're number 3.
We're the only city.
We're the only city.
So who is it that's doing that number 2?
That is Lane Scott.
That's
That's
what I-
putting that together. And so I'm not quite sure what their project is. The first session is coming up in February. This is just, yeah, what the different teams are. So what do we get? We get 5 quarterly peer learning forums in Chapel Hill, plus monthly webinars and additional trainings and events, technical assistance coaching and informational resources. And then we get funding, $5,000 for a project manager, but John and I are sharing that. We're gonna put it towards, we're not taking a stipend, we're gonna add it to the pilot project implementation, so we'll have $10,000 to put towards, I don't know, what, maybe to hire a lawyer to do the legal work or represent the trust or something like that. And then $7,000 to reimburse the travel for the team of 5 that'll go to Chapel Hill 5 times. And so this is their process. So they help you look at what problems are we addressing, what vision are we working towards, what resources are available, then how to build the framework, what steps do we need to take, and how will we organize it, and then how do we evaluate, build in how do we respond to our measures of progress, and then how do we sustain this work. So this is the 4-step process that the core group will lead this group through in establishing the trust. So we'll have homework. We already have homework for the core group. We got to meet before February 14th before we go. And so we'll be bringing things to y'all. We got to come up with a team name. Y'all got any ideas for a name for our team? But so we're really excited about it. As far as this is what we have to do, is convene the cross-sector collaborative, which is you all recruit and incorporate perspectives from additional community stakeholders, develop an action plan and shared vision, and then work collaboratively toward the goals, and then participate fully in the Carolina Across 100 program activities. So as far as the core group goes, as I said, it's myself and John. Robert has agreed to serve as a representative from WNC Source. And as the Section 8 voucher agency, Partnership for Economic Development, Jamie Justice, who is a staff person, who's the vice president, will serve as the fourth member. And then fifth, I've reached out to Self-Help Credit Union as the community-based lender. I've learned through going to these sessions across the state that they are very innovative in doing this type of financing for affordable housing. As an example, they reached out and got a grant from Dogwood to fund loans for Helene folks who'd been damaged by Helene to rebuild. They also are gonna hire, well, they have hired a affordable housing specialist for Western North Carolina. So they're really invested in providing financing for people that need, you know, LMI financing, low to moderate income financing. So they're excited to participate, and I'm excited because the person that is gonna be their affordable housing person for all of Western North Carolina is the lady that just left Land of Sky, Tracy Thompson.
Yeah.
So she's gonna be our fifth team member. So very excited about that.
She rocks.
Yeah, so these are the dates that will be going. The first one's February 18th and 19th, and you can see they're once a quarter. And so there'll be a lot more information to come, but this is big news that we're really excited about. Any questions?
Congrats. That's awesome.
Okay.
And last,
Strategic housing plan update.
may I just keep going? Keep
Go
going?
for it, ma'am.
So this is also pretty quick, but I thought we're at a point where we need to kind of look at where we've been and where we're going, right? And so, you know, you guys have done a lot since you started meeting. I've printed all of the minutes, and they're almost like a little resource book for all the presentations and information that we've gotten. And this is just kind of a look back. This committee was formed about a year ago, met the first time in March.
It'll be our anniversary. We'll have to bring a little treat.
Hey, right? Mayor Pro Tem Hensley did a presentation on the Duke Leadership Forum materials. We talked about the affordable cities. Then we actually heard from Shane Phillips, and remember the 3 S's: stability, subsidy, and supply. And he focused on missing middle and broad upzoning for our area. And then the second day we had work sessions with staff, nonprofit providers, and elected officials. We had a presentation by DFI about the services that they could bring, and then City Council authorized the contract with DFI. Then we heard from Chapel Hill because they're an innovator in affordable housing. They do inclusionary zoning. They have an affordable housing land fund. They have various town projects. Then we took the field trip and we saw the DFI, public-private LIHTC project that involved ground floor retail, childcare, parking, and mixed income apartments. We visited with the Community Land Trust at the School of Government. Then in September, you heard from Lou about zoning, comp plan, minimum housing codes. That's when you voted to recommend the Land Trust City Council. In November, you heard the needs assessment by DFI. That thing is packed with information, you guys. I'm working at transcribing the comments to summarize with the slides and actually turning it into a written report. And so I've been going back through it and listening to it, and it is chock full of information, especially when you lay that alongside with what we just heard.
Angie, when you finish that, or at least the summary part, can we get that to Sheila too? Because it was like a community-wide a needs assessment
was
for
not
what is
limited.
needed for housing, not affordable housing, but like for generally
Mhm.
for housing. And so it's just very good data for us to have.
And so then in December, we heard from Connie and Robert about the Housing Authority and what they do, what their assets are, what their programs involve. And then Madeline gave us the presentation on landlord-tenant law. And then tonight we heard, or today, from Steve about the real estate market data. And then we heard our community listening sessions report. So y'all been busy. You've done a whole lot. So still to cover. Okay, public utilities, what did we hear like 10 times in that? We don't have enough public utilities. In the city limits, I'm not sure, but definitely I know it's a concern in other areas. But so Adam Sturr is gonna come and go over give you a basic understanding of our water and sewer system, where we have service, where we don't, that kind of thing, and how utilities could be used to facilitate affordable housing. We haven't heard from anybody about our unhoused population. We hear a lot about anti-displacement strategies for renters, so that's something still to cover. Our Latinx community housing issues, you heard today that there are a lot of concerns there. African-American community housing issues, I should have put / gentrification, anti-displacement, because that's something that we definitely need to talk about and focus on. It came up, where did that come up? About touring where were we? Boone, thank you.
Sounds fun.
So go to about manufactured mobile homes. They toured, Clayton Home, okay. And so we thought that might be something you all might be interested in doing, just to see how those are put together.
Because the conversation about allowing manufactured homes back in the community has come up and will continue to come up.
Yeah. They're made so much differently than they used to be.
They've come a very long way.
And they can make very, very good homes for people, so.
So we could invite, city council to go with us, but so we could put together another little field trip for that. We came across an old, from the 60s housing plan. 50s, okay. And so we thought that would be cool to share with you all. And then we have a impediments to fair housing plan that we have to have for our federal funding that you all need to be aware of. Maybe pull some data out of some other city plans. But I really wanted to ask, what else do y'all want to hear about before we dig into actually putting the plan together? What other resources do you feel like you need to do that? You can think about it. Maybe we can take this back up at the next meeting, but that's what I really need from y'all is what else would you like to know?
If we do land trust, the city is a relatively small area. How do we get the county on board?
I can't answer that question.
We put all
Can
those
you
eggs into the
sort of
Sheila
brief,
basket.
Like a synopsis of the land trust model?
Sure. So there are different land trust models across the state. The one that we went to in Chapel Hill focuses primarily on home ownership. And so the land trust owns the land and then does a long-term ground lease to the person that buys the house. So, ground leases are very common in commercial property, but it's kind of taken that idea into the residential, and it drives the costs down, and it's a very 360-degree program where they get people in. If they're not ready to purchase a home, they get them ready. And then the land trust, that's how you ensure permanent affordability, is because the terms are through the ground lease. I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but I'd be happy to sit down and tell you a lot more about it one-on-one, but it's a way to ensure affordability permanently. And it's worked very well in Chapel Hill.
Just send me some resources to read. It'll help out a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, there's another really good community land trust model in Wilmington.
Yep.
But basically it obviously lowers the cost of a home because you're not buying the land, but then they also get to still build equity in their actual home, so they can actually still sell it and leave with that equity to move on or, whatever. And so it just continues. So it's
inheritable. So if you paid off then you could pass it down to your, it's inheritable. But you're not gonna get a windfall either. There's a formula that dictates over and above your equity, how much profit you can make, because the idea is, there is a
Keeps it
formula
affordable.
to keep it.
The sliding scale.
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I need to see.
I don't have their formula that I can send you right now. We have to, it's gonna be, so that's one reason I want to, involve a community-based lender on this architectural committee, is to make sure that what we do is financeable, and how do we keep it affordable, and how do you come up with those scales and stuff. I couldn't tell you right now what Chapel Hills is. They explained it to us, but it's pretty,
It's a complicated.
it's
formula.
pretty
It is.
complicated.
And it doesn't, we don't have to use their formula
No,
just
we
because
don't.
that's what they use. We
Yeah.
can choose what self-help thinks is sustainable for.
But the other thing I liked about when we went to Chapel Hill with the Community Land Trust was they said a lot of the families will buy a home there, and then that they are in it for several years, and then that gets them ready to buy in the, like, the open market. So it's like another step, another stepping stone, but you're still building some sort of equity. It's just not like, I bought my house for $215,000 8 years ago and I'm gonna sell it for $460,000.
Which is what the private market is doing. for
Right,
most
right.
people.
Yeah, yeah.
Does the land trust work in the fact that it goes around and just obtains random properties, or do they act like a set subdivision somewhere or something?
So-
Both, yeah, Chapel Hill is all over the place.
So Chapel Hill has inclusionary zoning. That's where you require a developer to set aside a certain number of units as affordable. And so, but they only do that for subdivisions or condominiums or townhomes. They don't get into the inclusionary zoning on the rental market. Davidson does that, but Chapel Hill does not. And so then what happens is the developer has to get with the trust and negotiate the purchase price for the trust to buy that at an affordable price. And so then the trust buys the home and then resells it. And so it's something that has to build, obviously. You don't just have millions of dollars to drop down and start buying all these homes, but they have done that over the course of years. They have something else that I really like, and that is a maintenance fund, community maintenance fund. So what they do is when they bring a buyer in, they say, what can the buyer afford to pay? And that's what they pay. Now there's different levels, but yeah, that's what they pay, what they can afford to pay at that 30%. But that 30% includes a maintenance fee that they have to pay into the community-wide maintenance fee, so that when their air conditioning breaks or it's time to be replaced, the maintenance fund will do that for them. Or if their roof, it's time for a new roof or whatever, everybody pays into this. It's almost like a self-insured fund that they've developed. And the other thing I like is somebody asked them, well, what happens if you have to go and foreclose on somebody? And in 30 years, they've never had to foreclose on anybody because of the wraparound services that they provide. And they stay in close touch with their buyers, and if they get behind, they help them find the money to get caught up, and they just stay on top of it. So anyway, it's a really robust program, something to aspire to. So we'll see what, you gotta start.
But this is the first step in getting the county at least on board, is for them to show up and have conversations about it and to learn about these models, because Carson is representing the manufacturing community. And so, they need help community-wide to get people to be able to live here. Because that's one of the biggest challenges that our manufacturing community has is, people can get a manufacturing job making $75,000 in a different community where the average home price is, $300,000, whereas opposed to here, it's, so it makes it harder to recruit people, to this area.
Major issue.
Right.
We're all business owners.
Hospitals or becoming teachers.
And so by you showing up here, that is at least helping to kind of open the door for the county to be involved in, like, helping us all work on this issue, because it's a community-wide issue. Well, it's Western North Carolina-wide issue, but, we can at least do our part in Henderson County.
Yeah, so the goal would be to get the city, get it up and going and then turn it loose. I mean, in Chapel Hill, they don't just do it in Chapel Hill.
Right.
So.
And it'd be, hopefully be a non-profit. Spend it all.
Yeah.
To let the.
Be its own organization.
Once it's up and running and going.
Don Mitchell would like to hear that.
All right, Do we have anything else?
Taking questions from the audience.
Does he count as the audience?
I don't know, I'm asking.
You better do it quick, man, cause it's after 5:30.
Yeah, the aging, population, age-friendly housing, I was looking at your list of topics and, that's a tapped into. I didn't, have you already covered that? Okay. Comment worth hearing.
One to add. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good one,
Yeah, it is.
especially since we're doing the age-friendly. Yeah. Okie dokie. Well, if we don't have anything else, say that we are adjourned. The meeting will come around quick, so make sure that you have our next meeting on your calendar, because this one was late, so. Don't wanna just see you.